Welcome, everyone. Let's do a roll call. First up, looks like.
Amber Fellows, Grant Tillman, Mark Arthur,
Present.
Roderick Johnson,
Present.
Jen Eastridge,
Present.
Amanda Smith,
Present.
Jack Lark,
Present.
Brian Foley, Annie Somerville.
Present.
With 6 present, there is a quorum.
Okay, so we're going to move on to agenda approval. I guess I'll open it up for the committee. Is there any comments or changes anyone would like to make to the agenda today?
Mark,
Yeah.
if I may, I did hear that the Fair Housing Center was available. They are not here. And so I just would say if they do not show up, maybe we can try to get them for our next meeting. So I don't know if they will be here to present.
So can I make a motion to approve the agenda,
If we don't have anything to say.
I would just approve the agenda as is, and if they do not show, we can just put it on the next agenda.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I want that one.
Seconded.
Give us that one.
You both have it. Just you can each use it.
Motion
They move.
made by.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah, all in favor, say
I
aye.
missed the motion.
Aye.
Who is the first and second on there?
Pay attention.
Opposed, say, sorry.
It was my fault.
Sorry, I worked 18 hours yesterday. I'm a little tired.
Everyone said aye. Anyone opposed? Great, so we're going to move on to public comment. I will now open the floor for public comment.
I'm George Higgenour from 309 North Grove, and I guess I'm the floor. Basically, I just had a few comments. In terms of looking at priority for subsidies for housing, one of the things that struck me was that there's actually 2 multi-generational houses within the historic Gilbert district, which is only like 3 or 4 blocks around the proposed project. And I wasn't quite sure where that would fit in if the priority is for renters. Our first home that we owned was owned collectively with another family. There were 7 other examples on the 2 blocks adjacent to us, really interesting, diverse examples in Chicago. Other thing is there's a significant amount of low-income people adjacent or very close to the project, but not in the city. The city is just, the project is just 4 blocks from a huge low-income rental unit, which is right over the town border at the southeast end of the neighborhood. And Marsh Plating probably has a lot of low-income workers, which are workforce. I'm not certain how many of those live in Ypsilanti. Second thing I was going to talk about was density. Basically, it seemed to me that the houses were way too close on Grove Street. And what was really weird was one of the things wagon-winded is one of the things that happened right before I left the house was one of the typical occasional Grove Street type of incidents. The guy was really quite, I think, stoned or hallucinating, wandering around in front of the house, wandering into the garden, came up, tried the door, and I didn't want to leave until he basically figured out what he was doing and left. The nearness of those houses to Grove Street, which is heavily trafficked, really seems to me to sort of invite other types of problems. I mean, this happens not all the time, but it happens pretty regularly on Grove Street, where we get visitors who are having problems or panhandlers or any number of other things. I was wondering how heat islands were going to be handled in the development in terms of whether it be extra insulation, taking away most of the green space, and that could be a problem. We're real concerned about that there be some type of process to address foundation damage. And if that's not going to be addressed in the neighborhood, he has to figure out how we're going to address it. And any changes to traffic patterns or significant changes to the roads around there really needs the input of the people who live on those blocks. Those are major changes, but I can see that coming out of the development. And community benefits, these are things basically that have been listed by various people in discussions. One is post-project street repairs on Grove and Park and High. A safety barrier that actually keeps the herbicides away from the plantings. I'm not certain the city standards are going to make it in terms of what you need next to the railroad tracks in terms of height or protection. Cameras on Locust Street identify and ticket people, ticket trucks. I don't see a bridge being really useful on the tracks. I'm not certain what you can legally do to deal with those crossings. It'd be nice to have a community building or unit controlled by the HOA, which could be used by residents in the surrounding community. Nothing fancy, just a space. Or a central storage area where
I
tools.
think we're at 3 minutes.
Okay, and there's a couple others on there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak?
There's no one attending electronically.
Okay, great. So we will move on to, do I need to make a motion to close public comment? Okay, great. So we're going to move on to resolutions, motions, and discussions to the main part of our meeting tonight. So section A, approving the minutes of the April 5th, 2022 meeting. It's on the second page here. Anyone like to make a motion to approve? Or any other comments?
Comments. I've always struggled. I'm not playing that. And we had maybe 2 hours worth of discussions, but it only says that we have them. It does not say what it was about. Maybe we should say in the minutes that you can refer to the, as soon as a video or an audio.
There is, minutes are only supposed to include what the body does and not what is said.
Okay, I'm fine with that. I guess going forward, I guess we need to mention in the minutes that they can be got, the specifics can be gotten elsewhere as opposed to no mention at all, because sometimes there's valuable information. With that said, I do move that we approve the minutes.
I second it, and I also want to add to your comment, Robert, that in the past there was detailed minutes in text. Is there a reason why that's no longer included?
Because a parliamentarian informed the city that minutes should include what the body does and not what is said.
Is there, for example, tonight we're gonna like do this brainstorming section potentially. I mean, I've been taking copious notes during every meeting. I'm sure others have. Are there rules against us sharing notes with each other about the content of what happens? Say, for example, we create a list tonight during the brainstorm session of all the sort of like, you know, topics we're interested in.
Share them how?
I guess that's my question. Well, yeah, what's the appropriate way to do that?
You can forward them to me and we can make them a part of the packet if you'd like.
Okay, great. Okay, so Rod, you made a motion to approve the minutes?
I did.
I seconded it.
Oh, great, sorry, I didn't
There
catch
was
that.
a request within that, yes.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Okay, great. So we are going to move on to the discussion with the Fair Housing Center of Washtenaw County. And they are not present. I know Amber wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting. Could you just give us a little update of where, like, what the communication has been? Is there some sort of?
So my communication with the Fair Housing Center of Washtenaw County was requesting them if they were available on May 4th. They said they were. And then they asked about, hey, can you tell me more about the group? I just explained that this was a community benefits meeting. They had a lot of questions on what they could or could not do as it pertains to fair housing and for sale products. And then I never heard back. So I did get an email saying she was available. And then, so I just sent another email saying, hey, are you coming tonight, or if not?
Okay.
So
And sorry, who were you in contact with?
Pam Kish, she is the director of fair housing for Washtenaw County.
Thank you. Is there, I don't know much about fair housing. I don't know if there's other people in the community that do, but are we committed to this, Pam coming, or is there an openness to other
I can
people
reach out.
from fair housing?
Yeah, I'm committed to having them come, so I'm happy to reach out to them directly.
I mean, I just meant Pam specifically. I don't know if there was like another. Okay, cool. Yeah. Thank you, Annie. Yeah.
So Joe, since you're in the thread,
Yeah,
can you also, if you follow up, CC us on there?
yeah, the chairs, yeah, definitely. I just followed up, I can follow up again. If she emails back, I'll put you on it.
Thanks.
Can we make a request then that they be added to the next agenda?
Yeah, I guess if they're available.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool. Okay, so I guess unless there's any other matters regarding the fair housing discussion, we'll move on to item C. Presentation by the developer, modeling projected recipients of down payment assistance, debt to income ratio and purchase price.
Hello, everyone. You know what, hold on, I'm gonna grab a water, sorry, I can't tell already. Thank you for having us here again tonight. We have done a considerable amount of work since the last time we were here, trying to figure out how to accommodate some of your wishes. When we first planned the project, we had structured it under the same model that we had worked on during the neighborhood stabilization program, which was back in 2009, 2010, for those of you who remember. And under that model, the affordable houses, and some communities still use this model, the affordable houses would be sold at market rate, but they would be, a second mortgage would be applied for a subsidy amount, buying down the first mortgage from the buyer. That worked for us in NSP, and it works well for a short-term affordability period, because that second mortgage would burn off over, say, a 15-year period, which is a standard HUD home affordability period. And at the end of 15 years, you would have a market rate home to be sold to a market rate buyer. That model does not work for a longer affordability period, because at the end of 15 years, if you had a new buyer coming to buy that home, you wouldn't have the funds for the subsidy to get to the market rate sales price. So our team has been working diligently on a new model that has components of a community land trust that would allow for a longer affordability period. We are still working with our lenders on exactly what that affordability period is, but it is longer than what we had originally anticipated. The model that we're looking at would set the affordable sales prices at the affordable rate based on the area median income of that family. So for example, we ran models in close communication with Washtenaw County Community Development staff, Teresa Gelati and her team, to really create some estimates on where we think folks will be at. Of course, there is no one size fit all. People are going to have different amounts of credit card debt. They're going to have different credit rates, but we ran some assumptions looking at home buyers. And just so everybody has the information, the HUD rates just came out recently setting maximum income levels per targeted area and rent levels. For Washtenaw County, a 60% area median income salary for one person is $49,500. A two-person household is $56,580. From that amount, we generate a maximum housing cost of 30%, which is a standard rule applied to HUD programs. For a single person household, that's around $1,200. For a two-person household, that's around $1,400. With that information, we backed into a mortgage, a first mortgage that would be sustainable for a family at 60% area median income with Teresa's team and their help. We made some assumptions on credit at 620, 620 to 650. We made some assumptions on around $300 per month in credit card debt. But again, families are going to be all over the place, but we need to set a level that we think we can get to with the help of down payment assistance provided to the buyers. So at this moment, we're looking at a first mortgage of approximately $140,000 for the cottage and $150,000 for the duplex. The other reason that this model works better than the second mortgage model is because of the tax rate. So when we ran NSP in Detroit, we struggled with this because if you set the sales price at the market rate, the family is paying the full millage rate on the market sales rate, even though their first mortgage is reduced. And it's just more difficult to make it affordable. The first mortgage has to be reduced even further to accommodate those taxes. Under this model, the family would only be paying the taxes attributable to the sales price, which is at 140. So the property tax is lower, making the entire arrangement more affordable. Under this model, we are working with banks. I'm going to let Shannon talk a little bit about the banks that we've talked to who are very interested in applying down payment assistance on the back end to the buyers. But before I get there, I'm going to give you some information on the 80% families. We are looking at both 60% and 80% sales prices. For the 80% families, single person household in Washtenaw County at 80% area median income is $66,000 in salary, and 80% family is $75,440. Housing allowance, maximum housing cost for these families for one person is around $1,700, and for a two person, it's around $1,900. Same assumptions were made. Credit score at 620, a few $100 in credit card debt, things like that. At the 80% area median income level, we are looking at a sales price of $165 for the cottage and $175 for the duplex. Shannon, do you want to talk a little bit about the banks and their down payment assistance?
Absolutely. With the targeted demographic as well as the AMI, we're working with both PNC and Huntington Bank within their what is called CRA, their community redevelopment programs. Those are specialty portfolio loan products that they will offer to borrowers on the back end. Eligible census tracts like 220 Park Street qualify for that. They will work with a host of first-time home buyer and other programs within that portfolio. Both PNC and Huntington are willing to contribute an additional $5,000 grant to be used towards down payment and closing costs.
that would be leveraged with any existing equity or down payment assistance that we bring into the program. Huntington is also an approved MISTA lender. We're looking at MISTA loan products as well as MISTA down payment assistance. MISTA down payment assistance is available for those making under 80% AMI at an additional $10,000 down payment assistance. And just for clarification, the two $5,000 grant and special portfolio loans are to anyone that purchase in the census tract. That area of Ypsilanti will qualify for all home purchasers to be a part of that program. They will work within, generally there, as Jill said, the MISTA and HUD criteria requires a 620 credit score. They'll make exceptions for those that, can write letters of explanations. Any qualified purchaser will be required to get certification through a HUD approved counseling agency, to go through a financial literacy and homeowner counseling for that as well. But there are some additional MISTA criteria and components on their mortgage that's coming down. The Michigan underwriting team at Huntington is working with MISTA to continue to explore additional elements to bring to the portfolio loans for the buyers. The other thing I would add is, again, modeling similar to a community land trust, the affordable homeowners will have an escalated sales price over time. We're looking at the Grand Haven Robinson Homes model, and actually Washtenaw County has structured that model through homes, so we're pulling deed restrictions. So if an affordable family buys a home at 140, they would be able to sell it at X in 5 years, Y in 10 years, and so on, allowing them to build some equity in the home, but also maintaining affordability over time. We are currently looking at restricting the 50 units in the affordable side to primary residence exemption per your interest and our partners. And at this time, we are restricting 10 of the units, this is the current plan, to 60% or below on the affordable side. That is our current structure. It is what our underwriters are reviewing at this point. And we have received very positive feedback from the lenders that we're talking to.
Would you be able to just repeat that last part again, just the numbers? Thank you. Sorry, just
No, that's okay.
like the last two sentences. Yeah. The number of units.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Just
sorry.
lots of numbers in my head. So right now, 50% of the units are set aside as attainable. Our lenders are looking at the application of set aside of 10 of those units being set aside for families 60% or below.
Okay.
So just a piece of that affordable side. And then for the entire affordable piece, which is 50% of the total units, 23, we are looking at applying a primary residence exemption through the condo bylaws, which would restrict those units to owner occupied.
So it'd be 13 units at 80% AMI and 10 units at 60.
Correct.
Well, 6 year.
6 or below, yes. We know there's some interest in going deeper. We're working on additional down payment assistance to help those families.
I'm sure we all have a lot of questions about it. I just want to acknowledge that Pam Kish is on the meeting now, so I don't know if Andrew, you've communicated with Pam.
I've let Pam know that we're in the middle of a presentation. We can come back, but I think that having a couple, I feel like you guys got a lot. And will all of this info that you just provided be available in writing, just so like after the meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
I can get that to you tomorrow if that's okay.
So I guess we'll, keep discussing and then we can return to Pam after the discussion.
I have a question. The Robinson Landing project, so can you explain that to me? Part of the property, part of the community land trust?
Yeah, so in that project, I believe there were 32 units, 16 were set aside in a community land trust. The sales prices are set based on the area median income, so they are below market. There is an escalation in those sales prices, but I think most of you know, under the community land trust model, the homeowner has a long-term lease on their house. They do not have fee title. Community land trust is a situation where a nonprofit owns the real property, and then the structures themselves are leased out as under a long-term lease. So it is a similar structure. We believe that we are accomplishing the goals and objectives of a community land trust through a site condo model, working very closely with our condo attorneys to accomplish that.
I just want to add to, as Jill said, it's very similar structure, but allows for home ownership, yet keeps the restrictions in the master deed and bylaw within the site condo. But as Jill said, we were able to get some very useful information for some similar type of programs that Washington County runs that are for sale, which is this escalated sale price. They have a history with it. They provided very beneficial information. And so we have kind of combined both of those models. Their existing programming in Ann Arbor with a condominium project that they have, with putting these type of restrictions that are going to be built into the master deed and bylaws.
Another question. So this project, was this something that you guys worked on?
No, but actually one of our project partners, Michigan Community Capital, was the developer on that project.
Okay.
They are the commercial lender on our project, and we've been working closely on that structure with them.
Okay, I guess, this is the last thing I'll ask and then I'll stop talking. I guess I'm just wondering why we can't do this with the 220 property.
So a community land trust starts with the establishment of the nonprofit organization that will hold title to the land and setting all of those goals and objectives. That organization needs to be funded in order to do the construction. One of the hindrances of community land trust in the state of Michigan is that we don't currently have a exemption in our general tax act for that property. So that property is taxable with Ypsilanti's tax rate. That creates a significant barrier for the maintenance, the long-term operations and maintenance of that CLT property.
So just to give you a little bit of background in looking at this, if this were to go into a community land trust based on the state of Michigan's laws, then they would pay the operating millage of 85 mils instead of 67, which would then make the rents even more than what they would be under home ownership.
I also wanted to add that would be a different project financial model, and it would increase the gap, which is growing daily in construction costs significantly. You know, the main reason most folks move into community land trusts is to have that affordability. And we've been able to achieve that by including that and running that with the land.
I have some questions. Besides the Robinson Landing project, you mentioned Grand Haven homeless model, is the same thing? Okay. And you mentioned also restructuring something for a lower property tax rate. Didn't really catch this. Can you explain that in detail?
Under the first model that we ran, we would be selling all the houses in the unit at the market sales price. So let's just say that's 185. But on the affordable units, the buyer would come to the table with a first mortgage of 165, just using numbers for example, and there would be a second mortgage for the difference. So that home buyer would be able to come in and pay a lower mortgage amount, but they're paying taxes on the full sales price. So it makes it really difficult to make that model affordable in Ypsilanti. Under the new model, the sales price is set at 140, and so they're paying taxes on 140, not the market rate sales price. So it's more sustainable.
So would that strike the down payment assistance need then, and just be the TIF would be going to lower the sales price?
So we still have the TIF in the structure as a subsidy, but it's coming in on the construction side. So basically, the sales price for the cottage market, the cottage market sales price is 185, but the affordable sales price for a 60% family is 140. So that's a $45,000 difference that we are using the tax increment financing program to fund as a construction source.
I'm not so. Oh, sorry. So that would just be in replacement of that down payment assistance model that you had prior.
They're both subsidy models. We called it down payment because it's easier to understand, but it's all a construction subsidy. It is a financing piece. It's a private loan. Actually, we're hoping to get $1 million from the Brownfield revolving loan fund if it's approved. But the rest of it, we're going to be taking out a private loan. And it'll come in at construction, it'll pay for construction, and then get repaid out of TIF over time. So it's still a construction source, but it is a subsidy on each unit to create affordability.
It just wouldn't have to, it wouldn't be as part of the sales price, the taxes wouldn't reflect a market rate
Correct.
sale.
Correct.
So, I'm not sure if I think the first meeting we talked about how affordability in Washtenaw County is not the same thing as affordability in IFC. And as a response to that, we talked about the 60 and 40 numbers. And I'm not sure how that translates in real dollars to what you're now proposing, which sounds like we're not looking at what would be affordable for anyone that is in, the group of people that we've been talking about.
So we did not run this model for 40. I'll add that to what I distribute. It will require significant down payment assistance for a 40% AMI family. We want to be careful not to put someone in something they can't afford. I can't tell you how many of those units would be of the 10 that are set aside at below 60, where they're going to fall in the 40 to 60 range. The home prices will be slightly less for the 40,000 or 40% AMI homes, and I'll pull that data for you.
I guess when my reaction to the numbers that you shared tonight was the 60 and 80% salaries that you mentioned are like IPSI rich. I don't know that they're IPSI affordable at all. So if you're basing, what somebody could pay for their housing on those numbers, I don't know that that's going to help get people out of rentals who want to move into home ownership.
Well, those 10 are 60% max. So they're going to fall somewhere underneath. We just have to balance out, what we have access to for down payment assistance, because those buyers have to qualify for their first mortgages too.
And can you remind me in the original plan how many units we were originally looking at in that 60 and 40%?
I think we only had 4.
We originally had up to 120 AMI. And remember, this is a for sale development. So we are limited to income targeting and what we can bring enough gap in subsidy to make available.
So the HUD 2022 HUD numbers just came out. What is it for single and family at 40%?
And I have to pull it, and I can pull it tonight and give it to you guys with the same analysis that I'm supplying tomorrow, so you can see it.
Did that just come out, Amber?
April, it was the beginning of April, they come out.
Do we know approximately what it's at, the rates? Or do we know 100%, so then we can figure it out?
I would be guessing, just based on the difference between 80 and 60. The 80% AMI single individual family is 66,000. And the 60% AMI single household is 49.5, so there's roughly a $17,000 difference, so somewhere in the low 30s. It's probably where 40 is gonna come out.
I had a couple of questions. Thank you for, first of all, putting all of this together in such a short time. It's, really wonderful. I was wondering about you mentioned 23 units were restricted to owner occupied. Could you just sort of explain that and explain why it's not possible to do that for all the units?
Yes. So 50% of the units will be restricted to owner occupied through the condo documents. It's going to be a requirement in the bylaws for the owners of those houses to maintain primary residence exemptions on their units. So that will be incorporated. The reason that our project wouldn't work with 100% of the units being restricted to PRE is because we're anticipating that there will be a portion that will be non-homestead. We are anticipating that there will be situations where there will be families that rent the units. It is critical for our financing that a piece of these units be for rent in order for us to be able to repay the loan that we're taking out for the tax increment financing in a timely period. If we don't have any non-homestead portion of this site, the tax capture period goes out longer than it does under our current model. Right now, we have 20% of the site anticipated as non-homestead.
Thank you. My other question was about your work with the banks. I'm just aware of like I think with the nature and sort of our some of our interests in the community element of this work, if it's at all possible to pursue some of these discussions with like local credit unions or other sort of local banks even, just given that sometimes these big banks are, you know, have
So
different motivations.
we will be marketing and working with all licensed realtors, and borrowers will be working with all banks. Of course, we'll reach out to credit unions, but understand even while there's concerns, big banks have requirements to invest in certain types of projects, which allows them to offer special flexibility in projects such as these and bring in grants and low-income census tracts. See, credit unions don't have CRA requirements, they have different requirements. We of course, and we've reached out, we've met with the Bank of Ann Arbor, we've met with other local banks as well. We have no issue. And as we said, our borrowers are more than welcome to go anywhere they want. We're specifically trying to bring in additional incentives for banks based on investing in certain communities. So yes, we will reach out to credit unions, and borrowers will always have a choice.
Great, and that 5,000 grant that you mentioned, was that per person, or was that my understanding that's available?
Correct.
For any house.
Yep. That will be for any house in the development.
Going back to the primary residence, I guess it was, and I was under the impression that it would be 100%. Is that something that was changed in kind of the remodeling, or is it always part of the business plan? And if so, why do rentals help pay off your TIFLO investor?
We had never set the percentage. I know we expressed a willingness to explore that. We have talked to the county about standard situations, what they're seeing in developments like this, and that's where, you know, that 20% came from, is what really happens in developments. But the reason that a rental would pay TIF faster is because they're paying non-homestead rates. So the homestead millage rate is 65. I don't have what what is a homestead, 80, or non-homestead 88. So they're paying much more taxes. So all that tax revenue would be captured and used to repay the TIF.
What can be done to eliminate that need? Would you just need a longer window for the TIF?
We would need a whole new financing structure, because right now we're taking out a private loan to cover the TIF expenses, and it has to be paid back within a certain time period under lending requirements. So we really need to keep that tax capture under 15 years to repay the loan.
I would add to that, as Jill said, a lot of these protocols and standards came from working with requirements with Washtenaw County and through the Brownfield, the BRA, through the county as well, on what they were willing to do for tax capture and repayment.
And just let everyone know, I'm gonna put the updated income limits for 2022 in the Google Drive that I sent out to everyone. So that'll be in there before, in a few minutes.
The updated HUD.
Updated HUD income limits or any like that, AMI calculations for 2022.
I think Washco is 83,000.
82.5.
So yeah, Washco in comparison to Ypsilanti is like 35. I have just a couple comments. I think some of the things that you brought forward is really cool. Like, instead of having this extra mortgage down payment assistance of $20,000, that I think it would be cost prohibitive. I think it's better just to have a lower sales price. So I appreciate you bringing that forward. As far as like the county and the BRA, talking about their recommended tax capture models, like I don't actually agree with the county all the time and their assessments of things. So I don't know I think this would be too much of a compromise. I could see one of two things happen, either trying to eliminate that 20% set aside for rentals, or increasing the amount of the affordable units. If you absolutely need the 20%, so that instead of 50%, it would be 80% affordable units. I think this is just maybe too much of a hit, that we're going to have half of the development be market rate, which could be anything by the time it's done, as shown by Viridian and other similar projects. And then 20% of them to be rental property. That's just going to be renters paying the extra taxes on top of everything else. So I don't know if that's exactly what I would hope for this development. Yeah, I think that's all for now.
I just want to say, and I understand, totally respect your thought process. The incentive that we are asking for is access to tax increment financing. Tax increment financing doesn't work with a all homestead project. So in order for us to use this incentive for the project, we need to limit the recapture period, because we have to take out the loan. We're not getting a grant from the city. We're not getting cash from the city. We are taking out a loan and paying back that loan over time. So the repayment period is critical. So that's the issue. I just want to try to frame that up a little bit. So that's where we really need to limit that recapture period to about 15 years.
I had a couple more questions actually. In terms of the potential, you were describing a process in which the potential time period might be beyond 15 years for this longer term sort of mortgage payment process, right? Could you talk about what maybe a little more specifically about what that process looks like and what are some potential, like 20 years, 50 years, like?
So in our new model, there won't be a second mortgage on the units because they are selling at the sales price. The down payment assistance that's coming in from the third party sources, there may be a second mortgage for those. We're not sure how those lenders are going to structure those, but the second mortgage that we were going to place on the units will no longer be there. So all of the affordability period language will be in the condo docs, and it will be assigned, and it will be in the deed restrictions for the affordable units. So the time period for the affordability will be written into those legal documents. And at this point, I'm reluctant to say what that period will be. We really do need to get some term sheets back from our funders to know what their requirements are before we can share that with you. But it is longer than 15 years.
Okay. And then to follow up on this, the conversation about rentals. Is there some sort of restriction or something in place in terms of like, you know, there's like several landlords in the city who own huge amounts of property who are sort of not great. Like, is there something about keeping someone from just buying up, you know, 5 different units or something like that?
There will be a pretty comprehensive master deed and bylaws with requirements for site maintenance, for rental approval through the associations that are established. Frankly, we're, you know, other than any conversations that, and if we're not prohibited through fair housing, we can write in many of those restrictions. I wanted to add towards marketability too, that if you looked at the most recent comps in the area, and we'll provide them, we'll send those to Joe as well. There's a brand new listing within a couple blocks. It's no basement, 900 square feet, built in 1920s, that listed for 220,000. So, you know, home values do keep going up. As Joe said, this site has been issued in a request for proposal multiple times, seeking developers for this type of product mix and for sale with no requirement for affordable. So, you know, we've come in with a significant portion and really worked very diligently to bring in a lot of resources to make those units affordable and to buy them down in those price points. And generally, you know, when you look at successful home ownership versus rental, the sweet spot is 60 to 80. That's an affordable, really, and there's an opportunity for attainable, which goes up to 120%, which leads to other economic development opportunities for the city. What do you mean by that? So the city, other than the other project, has not built any housing since the 80s. And number one, people that live in the city, there's an economic metric that's used for main streets of every person, every household you grow, how much they spend in your city, that they use in economic qualifications. That's significant because it's computed towards what's called your day and night population. Those are folks that spend money local, that, you know, go local, and it's critical. And there's no way for growth without new housing.
Just one correction, Peninsula Park was built since the 80s.
I think she said that one besides Spencer Park. That was, yeah, that was 2000 and you just been open, no, 6. I thought. In there.
I told people 2008, so I'm looking around.
It was in the mid 2000s. But there's never been any single family housing. There's been 4 single family homes built in the city since 2005. And before that, any substantial development was early 80s. So that's been our biggest, sorry.
Oh, no, I mean, I think, it's a fair point to bring up. I think it's a strong point. I also want to comment that this body is made up of people that are not anti-development. I mean, specifically, the neighborhood is quite organized and not very fond of this development. So I think you have like maybe the most favorable group of people towards actually, advocating and getting this project through. So I just want to note that too, is that, this is probably the most favorable group, but we're still going to have things that we want to see, and we're going to try to negotiate those things. Otherwise, if we can't get buy-in from the neighborhood or the greater broader city, the project's not going to happen. So I think it's a two-way relationship where, developers benefit from this group being on board with your project, because you're probably the best you got.
I just want to mention, I'm not anti-development, clearly. I'm one of the members that would love to see this project move forward. My understanding is that the developers are not making a ton of money on this project, so I just kind of want to state that again, that I feel that you've done a lot of work on trying to get funding for this to happen, and continue to try to reach those resources, and I appreciate that. For the people that will come forward and have interest in getting homes, it's really important that you keep going back at that, because it shows me that you are willing to do the work, really, for this project, and you care enough about this project. Doesn't sound like y'all are actually making bank on this. I'm just gonna name it like that. So I feel like there's a lot of intentional action on this project that is for people and not, I don't know. I hear what you're saying, Amber. I really do, but I also feel like this is not an us against them kind of situation, and I just appreciate everybody, who's doing the work and trying to just make this the best community benefits outcome possible. Yeah, that sounded like such a peacekeeper thing.
That's okay. I mean, I see that us as, we are advocates for the residents and the people, and then, developers are the advocates for developers. So we have to understand that relationship in some way. I agree. I think it would be great to have like a agreeable process. I don't think we're going to get through this if there's incredible impasse, but I think the reality is that, we're not a body to try to basically rubber stamp whatever the developer brings forward.
Absolutely. I understand, and I do agree with that statement, that that's why we have these types of things. Otherwise, they can just.
Well, and just if I can, I think that the developer took a lot from what happened over the last 2 meetings and listened to the discussion and brought back a different model, hoping to address some of the concerns. I will also say, and looking at the pro forma of this development, a typical MISTA LIHTC, so a low income affordable housing tax credit, the development model allows for a developer to get a 15% developer fee and anything they do, and that's standard across the board. The developer here is taking a far less than a 15% developer fee. I think almost half of that. And so for any developer that comes in to do any sort of affordable housing project, there's always a developer fee. This is a substantially reduced developer fee.
I think, we are a social impact developer. We are not a market rate developer. We do make reduced developer fees. We are passionate about community development. Our hope here is to listen to your wants and needs, figure out how we can make them work in our model. If you guys have things you want and we can't accomplish it, we're just gonna have to tell you. You want a community land trust? That doesn't involve us. That is a whole separate model. Our financing is based on us coming in and taking control of the property and taking all the risks during construction. If you want a co-op, you want a community land trust, that's a whole separate entity getting all the financing together. So our job is to tell you what we can and can't do within this model to try and meet. And I hope that that's how we're coming off. That's our goal.
Sure. I think that is,
We do have Pam also.
yeah, I'm excited to hear from Pam.
Yeah, does anyone else have any other questions or comments for the presentation by the developer?
Right. I just needed a clarification. You asked a question that I don't know if it was answered or not. So there was a question, which you said, well, we're down to about 23 of the units that will be owner occupied, then there's the other 23, and that's a negotiable number we took in this group. The question was, well, one person came and wanted to buy 5 or 6 or more of those properties as being as a rental. Is that something that we can prevent or not?
Yes, we can prevent that in the association.
Okay. One buyer, one home.
Yes.
You're both saying that.
Yes, we can make that restriction.
Okay, I can see that.
But that's not a deed restriction, that's a condo association.
Correct. Yeah, it's how the condo manages the market rate condo.
And it can be put in the master deed and only changed through the association. So we can write that right in the master deed of bylaws.
And Amber, just to be very clear, there's gonna be 2 deeds. So there's the deed of the home and the deed of the whole condo. And so I believe that would be a master deed condo association restriction for the development. Which in working with the developer, that has been something we've been concerned about the whole time. We don't wanna subsidize the development, have one landlord come in and buy up all these homes. That was never the intent of any of this. And we were very, very big on that. And so the developers.
My only concern is fair housing. So I'd actually, that might be a great segue for Pam. I'd love to hear what Pam said about, that would be my only concern as an attorney. That piece, but.
Okay,
Sorry,
good.
That's that.
the sound isn't great. This is Pam. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I think, and this has been very helpful just in terms of understanding what this project is. So can someone repeat what the question was? Is it the question about whether landlords can come in and buy these units?
Yeah, so Pam, the main question was, and can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Okay, the question was, can we restrict this development, which is a for sale product, to one person per house? So you can only have one family buy one of the houses or one immediate family buy one of the houses? Or do we have to allow for people to buy multiple houses?
that is not a fair housing question. Fair housing would be you're denying someone housing because of their race, color, religion, national origin, disability, children, etc. That's not something that I understand. I can't imagine that there would be an argument. There's no fair housing argument. It might be some other kind of argument, but it's not a fair housing argument.
Thank you, Pam.
Maybe, hi Pam, my name is Mark, I'm a co-chair of the committee. I'm wondering, I know we did have some specific questions, some of them were like about, I believe, marketing the property, and I wonder, also, this is a question for the committee, should we maybe go around with specific questions that we have right now for Pam, or do we just want to have a more open? Yeah.
Some of these, can I just stop everybody for 1 second? Some of this, I mean, this is a recorded meeting. I assume it's open to the public.
Yes.
I mean, this, I think some of these sort of questions may be better discussed in not such a public forum. Because we don't kind of know where this is all going to go. And I mean, I would say this to any group that's sort of trying to figure these things out. If someone wants to challenge something that you're doing, you don't want sort of all your thought processes kind of right out there. Does that make sense? I know this is if this were to go to, I'm just started saying, I'm not a lawyer. If this were to go to litigation for some reason, whatever these discussions are about your thought processes about marketing and all of these kinds of things would be evidence to be used against the city of Ypsilanti or against this group in court. So I would always say that in these kinds of things where you're just kind of bouncing ideas off each other and you're wondering what you're trying to do, I would not do that in a public forum. So you can still ask questions and I'll answer them, but there's some things that I think we should not. Yeah.
Can we get a memo issued by you and then have a closed session?
What would the question be?
The question would be on the legality of marketing housing towards city renters, like prioritizing that.
Legality of prioritizing the marketing towards city renters.
Yeah. For like a period of time, like a window of 3 months. So if we got a memo issued, would we not be able to enter into a closed meeting?
I believe that we could, to discuss an attorney opinion on that issue.
I'm not certain an advisory body can go into closed session for that.
Oh, okay.
I don't think they can.
I'd have to check on that, whether the advisory body could, but I also kind of question the intent behind it. Sounds like it's an attempt to avoid the OMA, and I would lean on the side of openness and disclosure for the public. I do understand the concerns that typically with private landlord, may want to keep those discussions close to the vest, so not be used against them. But everything that we're doing is we want it to obviously have the public the full understanding and disclosure that we're not trying to be secretive.
Yeah.
So I do respect the speaker's ideas, but I would lean towards compliance or openness, transparency.
All right, well, I'm gonna not ask any questions. No.
I'm going to ask a couple questions for Pam and maybe just high level fair housing questions that are non-specific to the city or the site.
Okay.
Pam, can you just explain the sensitivities on fair housing as it relates to protected class, targeting, for instance, if it was a city employee or a city resident? Can you provide some basic overviews of the do's and don'ts in those classes, just to give some start some high level discussion with this group?
I mean, I can give you just sort of an outline.
Hi Pam, sorry, this is Mark, the co-chair. I just want to pause. I know we're cut for time here, and I'm just like very aware that this committee is really about us asking the questions and sort of motivating, and I don't want to lose time since we're ending at 8. So I just want to check in before Pam, you answer that question. If there's anyone on the committee who would like to start a discussion with Pam about the, because we did bring her here, ask her to come, sorry.
I think we brought her here with the expectation of being able to ask questions and get answers transparently. So
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of at an impasse. So I'm happy to hear whatever questions everyone's.
I might just say that, the very first thing you said, Pam, about, that question not being a fair housing question might have just answered everything for me at least. It seems like if the restriction isn't one that is infringing on a protected class, that's not a fair housing issue.
Correct.
Cool.
Did you have a question, Joe?
I do, which is, Pam, can we limit who we sell properties to based on where they live? And this is limit, not preference.
I might have to do a little research on that. I would say, I mean, where municipalities get into trouble are if you have a municipality that is majority white and you then limit who can live in some, whatever this property is, based on the fact that you already live in that community. Then people would say, well, you are sort of, you have this rule that seems perfectly fine, except that it keeps out any person of color from, because there's so much segregation, it keeps people of color out of this housing project. You don't have that issue as far as I know in Ypsilanti, but that is the issue.
Correct, and I think maybe some of the direct questions, because luckily we have our lawyer sitting right next to me right now. So we can actually ask some very direct questions on that to make sure that we're not violating anything. I think our biggest concern is just making sure that whatever we do and any preference that we ask the developer to do and require in a community benefit or a developer agreement is sound. And I understand a lot of it won't be fair housing, but I think some of it could border on it. And in our conversations in the past, some of it is you really are going to have to talk to a lawyer about this, because there are a lot of rules and we want to make sure that we're doing it right. And I appreciate you coming in, and I get that some of it is better to be done offline. But our goal is to make sure whatever we require, we can, number one, legally do it, but two, that it's appropriate for fair housing. And I think some of it doesn't at all cover fair housing aspects, but some of it I think does at least blur some of the lines.
I can certainly find the best lawyers to ask these questions of.
Pam, I'd like to add to what Joe started, which was in terms of limiting the buying to people based in Ypsilanti. What about a 3-month preferential time period? Kind of the same question, but there's a time limit to it. So does that change the metrics of the answer?
So let me just make sure I understand this. So for the first 3 months, you limit, you sort of give a first crack at buying or renting to people who live, is it in the city of Ypsilanti or in the? Yes, in the city of Ypsilanti.
And who are renters. Yeah, and who are renters.
Who are renters who live in Ypsilanti. I've never heard of any of this sort of time thing. So I don't, again, I think if you were 100% white community, that would be a problem. But I don't think that you have that issue.
I have a question based on that. Could we 100% leave the development open to only current city of Ypsilanti residents?
I would probably want to talk to an attorney and kind of get a memo on that.
Okay.
And again, I know sort of who those attorneys would be. Again, I'm not, you aren't, this is not Livonia. Sorry to say anything but bad about Livonia, but or historic Livonia that was like 99% white, or the whitest city in the US. So I just I don't see that as an issue. The timing thing isn't the issue. It's who is the pool of potential applicants. And does that pool sort of recreate segregation that's already a problem?
Awesome.
Am I familiar with right of first refusal?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Are you familiar with right of first refusal?
I think that's if you're already renting a specific place and it goes for sale, that you have the right to buy it before they put it on the market. Is that correct?
That's one version of it. That's a tenant's right of first refusal, yeah.
Income. So if they're, I don't know.
But that, that's kind of just
It's an asset.
something that's already pretty well established as a mechanism for having time periods. But wasn't sure if you had heard of that or were familiar with that.
I've never heard of that as a fair housing issue, but that doesn't mean that it's not. I just have never heard that as a fair housing issue.
I have another question along the same line. Leaving out the where one lives, and would restrict to or give preference to renters versus homeowners.
Again, I think you're in a position to say, if someone could make an argument that that there's a big racial difference between who owns a house and who rents a house, and that you are giving preference to renters, and I suppose again, I think we would really have to ask an attorney what if there's any litigation on that issue. Has there anything been litigated on that issue? Also, things that you're trying to do that are pro-integration. It's a lot harder to get into trouble for that, as opposed to trying to keep an area, keep it segregated.
Thank you, that's helpful.
So can I just do a check-in with the committee where we're at, where we would like to spend the next 40 minutes or so?
Yes, I would like to, we have 2 more meetings after this. Okay, I feel like we might want to spend a little bit of time tonight actually brainstorming what we want to go to the city, because I know what I want to add based on the last 10 minutes. So I think that's probably important, because we only have 2 meetings on.
Yeah, I agree.
Does anyone have other questions for Pam? I don't. Maybe my only question is, Pam, if you think there's a memo that might help this committee that isn't inconvenient to generate, then I think this committee would be happy to have it.
Say that one more time. If there's something.
You mentioned a memo that could be made regarding some of these topics. Is that something that we might be able to follow up on?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I am sure that I can find whoever we're connected to all the top fair housing attorneys in the country, and we can find out who is an expert in these kinds of issues and help you perhaps get a memo from that attorney. So yes, just feel free to call me.
Thank you so much, Pam.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to D, brainstorming, potential community benefits. I see we have a white paper here, thank you.
So we have 5 pieces of white paper, there's markers, there's 2 markers up there, there's 2 markers everywhere. We have Christopher, who will help us write on the board. I can also try, but my handwriting is pretty bad. If somebody else wants to volunteer, I'd appreciate it, but I will do it if need be. Looks like Jen's already ready to volunteer.
On it.
And, or I don't know if everyone wants to want to go around and write down their ideas so that we can actually put them as a list like we did on the first CBO committee, and we can go through and vote on them and rank them.
I can go either way.
We didn't do it like this at the last one, but I think having it big and writing.
Pretty sure we have to maintain these permanently as a part. Okay. I know, I'm just letting you know. Just make sure I get them.
So is the idea we're just gonna throw out ideas and then after all of our ideas are on the wall, we'll sort of prioritize them?
I think that's what I do.
Cool.
I think we should put up as many ideas as we need to put up.
And it should be spoken to the records. I don't think us going up and writing our own, we probably should go down the line, each one, and have one person write it up, so it's on the record. Correct?
Well, then Christopher,
Yes.
Christopher is going to be the scribe. Jen, you're on the committee, so you don't have to, but
Alright.
your handwriting's really good.
Thank you. I love you. It's fine. I just think one person can write, just that we shouldn't all go up and write. We should speak it into the record.
Cool. All right, Brandon.
Yes.
I would like to limit offers to current residents who are not homeowners. So this could be renters or people who are houseless.
Isn't that housing status?
And I don't want a time frame. I just want that to be who's allowed to apply.
Housing status, isn't that, yeah. Yeah.
I'm looking at the city's non-discrimination ordinance, trying to determine whether doing stuff that would violate the ordinance, and I can't, in the brief time I've been looking at it, can't say specifically, that it is, but it's as close to being there, I think, as we could get. So I'd like to perhaps research that more, if that's really a high priority.
Based on what source of income or?
Source of income, and we may be creating 2 classes of 2 different classes of, I'm not sure if we're talking renter or resident, but renter versus property owner. So I'm looking at that as well as, the source of income, and income includes like a housing voucher. So if we're talking, benefit towards a city resident to get that voucher, that it may be, it seems quite close to violating. I don't think it's in violating the intent of why it was passed, but an argument could be made that we're doing it. Or I think it's very close to being an argument we made that it's discriminatory housing.
Like if the rental portion of the development wasn't accessible to housing voucher recipients
No,
That would be a violation.
on the sale,
on the sale.
the properties that are offering for sale, and we're creating 2 classes of, an excluded class of people being able to
For
buy.
wealthy people.
It-
What are you
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think the source, in the definition of source of income, that's not a definition of source of income.
That's not source of income.
So,
Can I make a quick point really? quickly? We are a citizen body. We are doing a brainstorm. This is not, we're not making decisions right now. We are trying to understand what fits within a vision for this space, and when you do a brainstorm, it includes anything and everything
Yes.
that is, possible or impossible. And I don't think we should spend time during a brainstorm trying to talk about whether or not the ideas are possible. I think getting them up on the board as quickly as possible is best.
That's the hill I want to die on, so.
Let's come back to that hill.
We can go. So my understanding is that a bridge over the train track is probably not feasible. And so I've done some research, I've looked at the map, and there are 2 bus stops on Cross Street, in addition to Cross Street being the main road to all the businesses. We have this, goal of the development that it's going to increase business to the downtown areas. So I propose to put 2 raised crosswalks on Grove and Park that cross Street, and that those crosswalks have push buttons with, stop signals on them that get triggered when a pedestrian would like to cross to get to the bus that's on the other side of Cross Street, or to get to Depot Town.
Cross Street and what?
So Cross Street and North Park, as well as Cross Street and North Grove.
I would like to request, if this is an overall life enrichment element, I would like to suggest a shared green space such as community garden or raised beds.
Anything else?
I'll come back, since it's a rain, so I feel like we can kind of bounce around.
Yeah, I have other ideas.
I brought a list here, so I can.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I still think we need a fence at the south end of the site. That might be a planning commission situation, but it needs to be addressed by either group. I'd like somebody to go to the railroad and figure out what their herbicides they're using and can they be safe to people who live there. There's a couple of this basic for discussion, I assume, so we're not delegating. Oh, well, while we're on the railroad issue, my understanding that the reason that those 2 streets were closed is because we were going to get a train station. And by closing them, the trains would pick up the time to get through to do that. My question is, can we go back to the railroad and ask them to apply the same standards for Grove and Park as if they were crossings? Because there is no train station, so they don't need that time to be safe. That slows the train down. I can, for instance, I can sit on my front porch, and when that train is coming from the west, does not slow down until it hits Park. And we're talking, and going vice versa, it speeds up as it passes the river. So by the time it hits Park or Grove, it's going considerably faster than it does when it's crossing the river. That's a hazard, I think. It's a question. I mean, all we're asking is a question, so. I'm not saying it's a benefit that we need, but it's a question that should be asked.
I'm not sure how to report that. Exactly.
Well, to inquire to the railroads, can they use the same standards at Grove and Park that they do for normal city crossings? terms of the speeds of the train.
Sorry, can I just, Joe, is it possible for us to try to find that information out before the next? This meeting, I could probably be helpful with that.
I think I might need your help on that because MDOT doesn't always respond as quickly
Okay,
to non.
I'm gonna send myself an email right now and I can try to do that tomorrow.
Not to derail, but I think that was the whole point of them shutting down those roads, so they it wouldn't be limited, speed limited the same way as going through over the crossings. Like, that's how that negotiation happened from the state.
Yes,
Yeah.
so once a station gets planned, obviously, they're gonna go back to what they need, but right now, they're just using that extra time. Whatever.
I think I know.
I love how hopeful you were in just saying once it gets planned. I love how hopeful you were in saying once the station gets planned.
An additional bicycle ramp near the northwest corner of the site.
Northwest.
Yes,
I think just, general additional bicycle parking.
there is one at the southeast,
Mhm.
which complies. This would be more than what is required.
I make a friendly amendment that that's covered,
Pardon?
covered bike parking.
Oh, covered. There's a dog park mentioned in the Brownville application, and this is just a question, actually. It's not mentioned in the site plan. So one of those two is incorrect, and that would just like to see them.
Yeah, so in talking about certain benefits that could be allowed, we knew that the city had a piece of property directly adjacent to the site that could be used for a dog park. However, depending on the requirements of that wouldn't, the money wouldn't be there if other requirements were had. So it was in there in case. But it's not a requirement to do. It's more of if this group decided a dog park in that area was what they wanted to see, it would be great. But depending on what is being required, that might not be reality.
So we can still put that up as a question. There are 4 plate pocket parks on the site, 2 to the north, 2 to the south. On the 2 north ones, I'd like to see 2 crosswalks on the road within the site, so you can go from one side of the road to the other, to the north pocket parks. And lastly, there's no list of equipment for the pocket park, so we would like from the developers, what do they propose to put in terms of swings and things like that? There's no list.
I have one to add. Like, I don't know if there's space to just add benches. I'd like to see some benches in areas where they could fit. Is it also possible, I don't know if this even makes sense, but getting like this would require us working with the post office, but getting a blue mailbox somewhere on the site. Be able to try and mail.
We can definitely check, and this is the post office, and I know they have been removing them unfortunately, but they are very handy.
And then I have, I'll ask later, it's a question. Actually, no, it is, will people have mailboxes at their homes? Do we require that?
I think that's also, I think we didn't require you to have a stack thing. I think that's our plan to have urban mailboxes, but
Well, we have to go back. We would do it if we can. We definitely have a line item allocation. The engineering may be difficult, so let us check with the
Wait,
engineer.
I'm sorry, what do you mean by do, so I would prefer to see mailboxes directly at the homes. You're saying that you might have to have them like where they're all in one area?
The engineer will check with the requirements and site logistics with the post office, so let us just double check
Okay.
on that before I give you the specific answer. We most definitely have budget for that.
Okay.
Need to make sure that we can accommodate that.
I remember the very first meeting we had, one of
Mr.
our city
Tucson.
residents mentioned that, and I do think it's important because it's like, it creates like neighborly vibes, and if something happens to a person, you usually tell them at their mailbox.
so just to be clear, one of the reasons why the city doesn't address this in our zoning ordinance is because we want to see the at-home mailboxes.
Yeah.
And so by us not requiring the developer to do that, we can actually get mailbox, I think.
Okay, I don't totally understand how that
We'll
works,
talk.
the way you just said it, but, I would like prefer that.
We all would.
I'm trying to remember, because I would love recycling to be a big priority. And I think that's already built into the plan. Is it possible to request, or is it something that we even worry about at this point, requesting recyclable can next to trash can, like city walks have, like somewhere?
Are you the new
Let's put that up there. Yeah,
ones?
yeah. Yeah, because ideally that'll be a nice common space. People will be out there drinking sodas or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, this is something we were just talking about. I don't know if this is the appropriate place for this, but that there is a language in the master deed condo association about restricting these units to one person per house to buy.
What family?
Sorry, one
Primary
family.
residence.
Yeah.
Homestead.
And I don't know if this is relevant here, but for the condo association, I guess I don't understand how like those, I guess, bylaws will happen. I would like to make sure that there's not a ban on free speech, AKA yard signs and political signs or anything.
Florida rule,
What?
the Florida rule, all the
Yeah.
HOAs in Florida don't allow it.
And absolutely no canvassing signs.
So limit free speech, kind of.
No, that limits free speech.
Wait, what did you say? Absolutely no way.
So I guess, yes, kind of, but like it's the opposite. So like in some like communities that have like new developments, the very front, it says like no canvassing, but that's like, you can canvass it. It's just meant to deter people. Got it.
So no canvassing.
Yes.
No.
Well, I don't. Zero, no canvassing signs.
Please allow canvassing. Please don't.
I definitely want to talk about the HOA like a lot more. So, 'cause don't feel comfortable with it at all. So we can negotiate very basically minimal HOA
That would be ideal.
I support that.
Well,
When you say minimal, you mean the fees, or are you talking about the governance rules? Rules?
but the affordability will be built into the HOA and the master deed and bylaw, so there's going to be actually a pretty extensive HOA document in order to require the affordability.
Right, but I think,
In terms of like the,
but like in terms of like strictness on the rules, like. If you're like, if you have a bush outside of your house and it's turning brown because it hasn't got enough sunlight or water, you're not going to get a ticket for it or a fine. Like, I don't think you should put that.
Extra policing, like we already
Yes.
have ordinances.
Yes, for
City
the water.
ordinances, we don't need an extra police officer.
Or
on
if your
this.
windows cracked, like, there's some things.
But anyway, that's for another discussion, I just flagging it, I would like to talk about HOA
I think it should be on
more.
this list.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher.
minimal HOA.
So follow up on that, I don't know also what the feasibility of this is, but it has crossed my mind. I'd be interested in discussing this with the committee further, but if there were any possibility for us to have a say as a committee in who is on the HOA board in terms of its governance.
That I think is a legal issue. I think there's a precedence, and once again, that would be for the condo attorney, that there'll be a voting there's a voting opportunity in how the board is established. The board has to consist of homeowners, there has to be an election, there's a minimum number of board members, but I will get that information and see what's flexible or not.
Okay, thanks.
I have another idea. I would like to see like a resilience hub that could house like basic things for yard maintenance and things that people would normally keep in a garage, but they're not gonna have a garage.
Just to add to that, the document that George Hagenauer brought in about the comments from the Gilbert Mansion residents, there was a lot of things on there, but many of the comments were about having either a community unit or community area for activities, but just like a space that is public. As well as like a storage area. And another person said shed. So it seems like there's been multiple people asking for some sort of storage space and community space and bike rack. So just adding that on there.
I am curious about sound barrier for the residents for the train. And I know that the local community has brought up the issue, and you brought up the issue of if we need some type of physical barrier because of chemicals. I don't know how real that issue is. In the complaint, in the list of complaints. I think that I would like to understand better, and maybe this is can be put as a benefit, maybe it's something you guys are already doing, but we're doing to make these low environmental impact and resilient structures. In terms of like climate resiliency. I mean, we've talked about it a lot, so we haven't written it down. But I think for the sake of having everything in one place, for me, the top priorities in terms of benefits are affordability, long-term affordability, and true IPSI affordability for the most units we can possibly make happen within what's possible. think I got most of it. I think you all said most of the things that were already on my list. I know one of the early things that was discussed in the green space concept is that possibly some kind of didactic learning space. I like the idea of that. And it seems like it's not too difficult to add or.
That's already included.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, I like it, don't cut it.
Can I ask a follow-up question about the sound barrier to the developer? I know that the development on the Thompson block has like very good double pane windows. Is that within, are you at the point yet to know in construction if the windows in the properties are going to be double pane?
Actually, we have very high-end exteriors just as a requirement for our historic. We have wood fiber exterior, which is very expensive and has additional layers of insulation, and we're required to have wood windows. So we have premium windows already spec'd.
Right, but are there two panes of glass in the window or is it?
They're a double thermal pane right now on the spec.
Thanks. Yeah, that, okay.
I have a question. Will all of these units and the single family homes have like climate control? Will they be like fully equipped with like central air?
Yes,
They will.
they'll have full mechanicals.
Okay, so will that be an extra cost for the buyer?
No, and
Okay.
all Energy Star appliances as well.
And then same with the duplexes, right?
Correct.
Okay, cool.
While we're dreaming and scheming, can you throw solar on there? Also, I mean, I know we said it's not possible or feasible, but like the train stop, put it on the list. And if not a train stop, a train crossing, and if not a train crossing, a bridge over there to cross something. Add them on the list. I
think it's already been discussed too, but we'll just throw it on the list too. Water runoff solutions like rain gardens. And potentially natural sound barriers, mature trees. And in particular, non-invasive bushes, preferably native. plants.
I don't know that I fully understand how all of the tax exemptions work, but if leaving the schools out of that would be a possible thing that we could do, that would be my personal wish, that they still gave to the school somehow. Keeping in mind, this is all, it's a brainstorm. It's the big idea, dreaming and scheming part.
I have a question, and depending on the answer, it might be on the list. Will the utilities, electric stove or gas stove?
I have to go back and see what we spec'd just to confirm
Okay.
that.
I would like to see no gas stove.
Maybe to add on to that, Annie, no gas furnace.
Yeah, I guess. That's a good point. Yeah. Trying to get, yeah.
Radiant, is that what you're talking about?
I know, yeah, there's technology out there, I know, I'm not sure exactly what it is.
You're shaking your head. What is that?
You're not. If you're saying no gas, then you're saying electric. So let's be clear. You can't put solar on buildings because it's not situated the right way. Well, that's worth a discussion. Right now, we're talking about affordability. What may be more affordable now might not be the most sustainable, so that it's an equation. we have to look at.
Yeah, I guess the reason why I threw electric and not gas stove is because I'm hoping that as we get towards the future, we want to have gas stoves anymore.
Today, that might not be as affordable. We need to look at those things. I'm not against either one, but
I have something to add. So I looked at my old notes and this is where I was confused. It does say that, you all, the developers offered that the association yields restrict long-term rentals from coming in. So I was under the impression there was, we were not talking about any rentals, at least at some point. And so I would like to put that on the list. Either no rentals or negotiating a higher ratio of affordable housing, including adding back some of the density, because I know that some of the density had been removed. And I'm sure that's because of neighborhood feedback, but maybe we can strike a balance there, add a little bit more density, and get to the target that we want for affordable housing. I think one of the points that you brought up about a recent house that's 900 square foot with a finished basement going for $230,000 or so in the neighborhood is exactly why I think we should have negotiated for more affordability, because by the time this is done, that could be 300,000. We don't know, but I think it would be a benefit to try to get the maximum amount of affordability as possible, like Amanda had said. So the purchase price that was brought up before, so I just want to put on the list too, it's $250,000 to the housing trust fund with stipulations. I think that's something I'd like to ask for, and a citywide ban on short-term rentals. And public kiosks. Someone bring up the covered bus stop lane.
I mentioned the bus stop, but that's a great idea. There's two bus stops on Cross Street. Both, one is accessible by Grove and one is accessible by Park, and they're not covered right now, so.
And maybe covered bus stop. I think wetlands was kind of covered, right, a little bit. That might be it for me right now.
Question, is there a reason why the duplexes are no longer, like mortgage, like, so Amber brought up that there was a point in time where the whole development was gonna be like mortgage based, not rentals, which is what I remember from past meetings. So is there a reason why we can't make the duplexes homeowner?
So all of the units are homeowner, at least they're for sale. I think we're confusing homeowner and for sale. So all the units are for sale. The affordable units will be designated that they have to be owner occupied and cannot be rented out to somebody else.
But the duplexes can't?
So on the market rate side, we do not currently plan to provide that restriction on the market rate units. We are actually hoping that some of them become rentals so that we can capture the non-homestead tax on that side to help repay the TIF loan. So we are right now, 50% of the units would be set aside for homeowners only, non-rental.
Okay.
That's the current plan.
Wait, didn't you say it was only 20% you're considering for rental?
But that's not a restriction we're placing. We, at this point, we're not planning to place a homeowner restriction on the market rate condo. We are anticipating that 20% of the entire site will be rented out, just based on county standards that were supplied by community development.
Okay, I have a question about that. So I guess I'm not interested in that. So is there like, can I kind of get some more feedback on why we got to like this? In particular, like how are we gonna do that? Because that's what causes gentrification. We're gonna have people who have means to buy these properties and rent them out so they can make income off of that.
But you still have a condo association and bylaws that can restrict those activities. Don't forget, this isn't a free, there is the whole group of homeowners on that side will be bound by the restrictions in the bylaws and the deed for that piece of the condo.
But not the whole site.
So the way that our condo attorney wants to structure this is 2 separate condo projects, one for the affordable and one for the market. And the reason is to accomplish some of the concerns previously as of limiting the homeowner requirements on the affordable side. On the market rate side, and we're getting into a lot of detail, they will have a slightly higher association cost because those units are attached. But yeah, they will have 2 separate sets of documents.
But I'm glad, Andy, that you noticing too, that it was like a business model change, because originally we were talking like the whole thing can be deed restricted to primary residence.
Our TIF plan has always had some rental in it, so I think I remember mentioning that we would be willing to explore the option of restricting, but it was our understanding it was only gonna be the affordable side.
Well, so I guess for me, like, I don't think that the site is actually like affordable. It's attainable housing. It's like workforce housing. But like the housing that's gonna be set aside just below market rate, that's not even really affordable housing in the way that I'm thinking of it. So I guess I'm confused. So the duplexes are what will be this other half, which would be market rate. So can I just get like numbers so I like have an idea what the market rate for the duplexes might be?
So right now in the schedule, the affordable side, the 23 units will consist of both the detached single-family cottages and duplexes will be in the affordable side. In the market rate condo, it will include all of the towns. There are 13 townhomes planned and some duplexes.
While we're talking about this, like to make a motion to extend for a half hour.
What is the maximum price of the units?
You'll have to vote on that extension.
We haven't set a maximum price on the market side. We're waiting to talk to our lenders on that piece.
So there is a motion, you have to vote on the extension.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
Okay. So I'll be honest, at this point, I'm super confused and now I feel like I need to go back and watch every meeting that we've had on this site so I can get a better understanding of like what's happened and why I had certain ideas about what the site was and where we are now. Because that might change a lot for me. Yeah, this is really confusing.
That's why I'm interested in like, is it possible to increase a little bit of the density on the affordable side so that you don't have to, so we can just make the whole thing primary homestead, or, at least restrict it quite a bit to, yeah, I'm just like, I'm wondering, I also feel like I wouldn't be comfortable with just half of it being restricted to affordability. I definitely am interested in increasing the affordability, the ratio of it, and if that means increasing the number of housing units, then I would be very much for that. I'm not sure if that is workable with the cost of the building too, but something I want to put out there. And I mean, it seems like, is there more brainstorming? Because now we're deviating from brainstorming.
Looking at George's documents, there's a couple things from here that might make sense to add to the list. And he mentioned post-project street repairs. I think it's fair to ask the city to look at the streets afterward, make sure that we haven't done anything damaging. I think we actually covered the rest of the benefits that like
listed here, so go us.
What's the barrier, safety barrier?
We talked about sound barrier and physical barrier, about the herbicides.
That's number 4.
It's on the list. I didn't include this point about cameras because I don't really agree with it, so.
Yeah, not a.
Well, there's also the original list from that other one. I've gone through that and I didn't really want to add anything from that list. Are we gonna automatically include this list or
I don't-
only include what we talked about during the spring session?
I don't think we have to automatically include the list because this list was generated from a meeting that was primarily people coming in and just complaining that this project shouldn't exist.
Well, there are people
It
living
doesn't-
there, so that, I mean, there are people just like we are. So.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. I just don't.
I do want to note the ordinance stipulates we do need to draw from this list,
Yes,
but we,
I think we have.
yeah, we have a number of these things on the board right now.
There was a list from the Clark Street that I thought we were gonna take a look at as additional things. It's possible that we've already included those. I thought one of the things from just it's the document itself that started this group. It said providing either some kind of instructional element in the site. Now, last week, the developers talked to that, so I'm assuming that they're going to stick to the word. Have something like that in here in terms of walkways and signs and things like that. Maybe we need to put that up there.
Yeah, that's up there. I just want to say really quickly, I'm not saying that the meeting or the ideas were not valid. I just think that the conversations we've had at this table have been more productive and more focused.
I feel like this has been really good brainstorming. I've been asked before the next meeting, is it possible to get like a document that explains numbers and like exactly like which units and what type, which side of this agreement, and just more details so we have them all in one spot, I can actually see them.
Yes.
In addition to just like general baseline details about the brownfield acts too.
Yeah, so we will make sure that the next meeting is a week away. Then we can do that, if Jill can get the numbers that she has talked about today. And we will put together pen and paper and get it out to you prior to our next meeting. Based on staff time, we will move mountains because this doesn't exist. Some of it doesn't exist, some of it does, and it's all in different parts. You have some of it and you don't. I don't know if I can meet the 48-hour deadline, but between Christopher and myself, we can really try to move some mountains.
I do, and I think it's helpful to have just like the right now where this stands, the number of units that you're anticipating to be rentals, the number of units that you're anticipating to be affordable and at what level of affordability. And then if there's a possibility to show more than one model, so we can kind of understand when this number goes up, that number goes down. I think that's helpful to me because I think we saw like one thing in the beginning and now I'm not really clear in my head how the changes, if they're better or worse in terms of affordability overall.
You all said that I think by tomorrow you could send the information about the AMI and the standards for who might be able to get in there based on their debt to income ratio and the down payment price and all that, including the 40% AMI. You said that would be available soon, right? Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. I would like to, stop talking about it as if we would accept the rental portion, because that definitely wasn't what I was operating under. And I think it's already a compromise to have as much market rate as we're already discussing. So market rate and rental on top of that is just like far too much. And I know that wasn't what I was operating under before, and I'm sure that if we look back at the old videos, it wasn't discussed like that. So, yeah, I just don't want it to settle in as a final idea, because I definitely would ask for that not to be a part of the agreement.
And I also put up the deed restriction against rentals was a request of the neighboring community, which, for what it's worth, it's something that they also asked for. Personally, I think I don't have a good enough understanding of how rentals impact people. In that I know that not everybody can be a homeowner. I know that Ipsy's rental market is saturated with like almost monopolies, and that can be really problematic. I know that non-homestead properties do pay non-homestead taxes, like the school millage that we just passed yesterday. So those things lead me to believe that maybe rentals don't have to be bad, but maybe there's a way to make sure that they're not terrible. Like the idea of one owner or one home per person who wants to purchase, or somebody wants to buy, they're not buying all the rentals and being the overlord of this project.
Yeah, I would push on that a little bit, just in that our municipality is the highest rate of rentals in the state. We have 70% rental households, and we are lacking rent control. So it's not, it's not sustainable for people to keep their housing because we don't have rent control, and we're experiencing housing crisis. So while I was a renter for 18 years, there's nothing wrong with renting. It's one of the places you don't have a lot of assets that you can, hopefully still have housing, and the idea that you might be able to build assets towards buying one day. But that's just not the case anymore. We just have an out of control rental market. So I don't think adding to that is something I want to contribute to.
And I mean, I just add, unless there was a way to if it was an affordable housing project, that would be different, because that would be the only way that we can control the cost and maintain the affordability, but it's not. So yeah, I would agree with what, and I'm a renter, I have nothing against allowing people to rent there, but the problem is we're gonna have a situation where Thompson Block Apartments is supposed to be at market rate, or people who live here, if they were supposed to be affordable, they were supposed to be attainable, and they're absolutely not, and they're Airbnbs. So
I definitely think 100% short-term rentals, let's just nip that in the bud if we can. Can we?
Yeah, I'm happy.
Prevent that through the HOA, and or talk to the city about, can we pass an ordinance to say that, you have an Airbnb in the city, fine, you're grandfathered in, we talked about this before, but
yeah,
let's stop adding to that in our community.
I agree with you, and I've talked to a few people on city council about that, and I think we should do that before this and other future projects, but that's also counting on there not being a change in, I don't know, I like what Ann Arbor did, I think we can do something similar, and we should do that, and I'm not gonna, and I just know there's other things going on that could, so we should do it, I think we should do it. I think
We should have, because it's not concerned.
yeah, I think we should do it.
Put on the list, maybe they get added.
I remember talking about.
I think
Yeah,
it's
on there.
two different things. One is the city, is the ask of the city, and the other is the ask of the HOA.
I just have an overall comment. there was the idea of increasing the density of the site. As a resident, I'm not really, I think the site's pretty dense. I've looked at a lot of sites. I used to be on the planning commission. And we did sites like this. It's a masterful site to get as many homes on the site that you've done. So to think that you can actually get more is,
We
I
wouldn't
don't
be
see
able
how,
to.
because there's zoning rules in that need to be followed at some point, so. I think to go down that road is gonna be very, very difficult to do, and I don't think the neighbors in the area would appreciate more density, because this is pretty dense.
Was the density decrease due to what was the reason for that?
Stormwater. We're maxed for stormwater requirements.
I mean, but what about triplexes instead of duplexes?
It goes by pavement and concrete in the footprint, so we definitely could do triplexes, we could move things up, but we work that site over like for about 8 months right now, and this is the best mix to meet affordability and to get the separation that we need. With the pads that we have for the condo and the duplexes and detached rows.
Plus, remember, when you, like the market, the towns are 5 pads and a 3 pad. When you have units that are more than 2, you get into vertical condo costs. That's why the market condo is separate from the affordable condo, because in the affordable condo, there's only detached singles and duplexes. They're responsible for very little from site costs. If we started doing 3 plexes, those could not be affordable. It'd be very difficult to make those affordable.
Yeah, that was mostly an idea as to offset some of the, strain on the TIF, I guess, is just having more units for sale. And I know that the density was decreased at some point, so, I should just bring up, I don't know if other people recall this, there was all those, I forgot what are they called? Basically neighborhood meetings in 2014, where people kind of looked at various different site plan ideas and decided which one they liked, and basically all site plan ideas were hated across the board except one, which had basically comparable lot sizes to the rest of the neighborhood along the streets, and then a dense development in the middle, like a pretty dense multi-unit, maybe even like apartment, multi-story unit. So it actually had the same amount of density as all the other plans. It was just that they wanted the street facing housing to be comparable to the neighborhood. So I think from that, I just thought maybe the neighborhood's not necessarily against density. They just want some sort of like neighborhood character of housing replicated with a dense unit in the middle. But I know this is like just anecdotal, but I just noted it as like, it doesn't seem like it's just about having less, about what is going on with it too.
I'm also curious. I'm also curious if the CAR study or whatever it's called was ever done or discussed. I feel like what I've heard from the people that I know who are experts is that it's not actually an issue in reality. And I want to see that on paper so that that can be like shared with the community who is concerned about the density and the cars.
So I can say that we have a memo in our possession from our city engineer saying that a traffic study would not be required at all for this, or any sort of traffic, anything would be required. However, the developer is working with their engineer to actually conduct the traffic study. It should be done.
We have the rough draft. And
Okay.
we'll have it.
So we should have it, we'll have it to the planning commission prior to that. So it will be done. I can share, I think I can share with you the memo from our engineering firm saying that you would have to have a development, I want to say 5 times as dense as this, or 5 times the amount of units to actually require a traffic impact statement, and 10 times to require a traffic impact study. And so they would never require anything at this level. However, the developer has complied with the planning commission's request to conduct a traffic impact statement and circulation study in order to satisfy the needs of the planning commission.
I just want to, I guess what I want from that is us to have real math instead of, fuzzy math on what, because even if it's not a legally required traffic impact study, there will be different traffic on the street, and the people who live there are concerned about what that will look like. And I don't think that the math we've heard in the public comments is accurate. I don't think that you'll have, 2 people per unit and each person driving a car every single day, twice a day. I don't think that's true. I know that's not how my household works. And we have 3 people living in my house and 1 is a child, but I guess I would rather have like real solid numbers to be able to say, this is where it actually will stand, and we hear your concerns, and will or will not impact you in this way.
I can assure you will have that prior to the last meeting.
I do appreciate it.
But and it could be sooner. The planning commission's requested things, so I can assure you will have that prior to the last meeting.
Do you guys know what the like boundaries are of that traffic impact study that you're doing?
So I believe that it's based on the number of cars being used, based on the development, and then also we did take a usage of the blocks surrounding it, on where the cars would be coming from. So I have not seen the draft traffic study that they have done. I've gone through what our engineer has put together on why they wouldn't require it.
I know, I guess this is according to the developer. Is that including like where the traffic is coming from, outer areas into the development? Or?
They got the metrics directly from the city consultant. So we haven't, the information just came in, and we will get you what those boundaries are. They were provided to the engineer from OHM.
Okay, and you'll get that to us as part of some of these documents, I guess.
Yeah, we have a packet of information that's going to planning, and I'm sure Joe can
Yeah,
get
and that'll be
all
sure,
of
but it's going to go to the planning commission first. That's why I can assure it'll be here before the 23rd.
Great, thank you.
I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like I'm good until I have more information.
We'll make sure this is typed up, so it's a list that we can actually use by our next meeting. And then we will have a bunch more information prior.
Do you mind if I speak? I wasn't here in the beginning, I was working. I am a homeowner on Locust, which is one of the main streets that's going to be used for this development. We're concerned about the density.
Yes, go ahead. I think we have we'll do the public comment 3 minutes.
Thank you. We're concerned about the density due to the traffic increase. Right now, we get 12 cars, maybe 24 cars down Locust. And yes, if we have 40 units, that's potentially 80 cars plus visitors. So Locust is going to get used quite a bit. George pointed out that the center of this development is only 22 feet wide on the street. If you go down Locust, the widest part with the pole in the street is 22 feet wide. So there's not much room for extra vehicles. So if your driveway is filled and you need to have utilities or anybody come in, they're going to park on the street. So your street's going to be even narrower. Not only post-construction road work would be needed, but post-construction housework, because our foundations are double brick on dirt, and then the basements are dug out and they have cement built up against them, which is maybe 1 inch thick. These houses were built in the 1800s, so they're very old and brittle. And then we're concerned about trash can location because there are no sheds and no garages. So we're concerned about where all the trash cans are going to be sitting. 2 trash cans per house. Who knows? People are not going to be parking their bikes at the bike racks. They're going to keep them on their porches and in their houses and in their yards, plus all the kid toys and everything else.
So not having sheds means a lot of stuff floating around. Thanks so much.
Thank you. So with that, I get a motion to
Before, sorry, go.
Yeah.
Yep. For our next meeting, I think it would be helpful to get some direction. So are we going to go through this list next meeting? Get our priorities straight? Yeah. Is there any other, and then there's a few things to review from staff, I think. I just wanted to make sure that when we come in next week, everybody's got a good idea of what, we'll have a list of the benefits on Google Docs so that we can go through that and then have our own ideas about what we work on.
Yeah, I was under the impression that we were gonna mark off maybe what we, like what we want to choose even from the list tonight, but I'm not sure if that's where people's energy is at. So I at least think it'd be good to discuss possible agenda, like you said.
Maybe for the brainstorming, we could do something similar to how we do council goals, where we all get like a packet and we prioritize them, and then they get collected and we get information back on what was prioritized. I don't know if everybody likes that or not.
Can that be done through
Many
Google
meetings.
Docs or not?
No, that I would,
That's true.
I'd have to, I could create a spreadsheet, send it to everybody, they can prioritize it, and then send it back to me, and I can formulate it into one document and then provide it at the next meeting.
Otherwise, stickers. We could
You have stickers.
Or you just give us, like, if you have a spreadsheet, you can just give us like each person has X number of points to allocate. Just
Yeah.
tally.
Whatever is easiest, Pepper.
Do we want to put any limitations on this? Like you just show support towards as many things as you want, or do you want to, should we limit it? What do you think?
Maybe we categorize them based on like area, I guess.
We'll take a look at it and try to do our best. And it might not be perfect. But we're gonna put it in categories.
Yeah, sorry, categories, and then we can maybe prioritize by however number of items that are in that category, 1 through whatever the number is. I don't know. That might be chaotic.
For me, like I feel like the affordability piece is like so much higher than anything else that like if I were given 100 points, I'd probably give like most of them to that.
Yeah.
And then a few points to each of the other things that would be on my list. But I don't want to lose the really big important things in the shuffle of like 4 things.
So if you create all these into categories, and then you have, say, 5 per category, you just rank them 1 through 5, and then that eliminates a lot of the lower tier items from discussion, and then it kind of focuses the next meetings on really formulating what that agreement list will be.
Okay. I think for me, my priority for the next meeting in terms of from the developer would be really understanding where, if any, there is wiggle room and what the implications are of like if we do this, then this other thing changes.
Yeah, I second that. I would just like to see if the model, can be pushed to not have rentals in it, or, what would need to change from TIF or any other funding to not include rentals as part of the model. I'm invested in that, as well as just increasing the ratio of affordable units. So I would see, just ask the developer if you can think of that. I know that, it's a challenge. I appreciate everything you've done so far, but definitely something I'm interested in asking for.
Can I ask,
Go.
when you guys separate in categories, can I ask that you align them with the pieces of the ordinance? Just so that we can understand tier 1, tier 2 in those categories so that we can make sure that we're meeting the ordinance requirements just from that. It would just keep us organized.
Yes.
So just to repeat, one of the main agenda items for the next meeting is to review the document that will be sent out to us that has the various votes or tallies in terms of what our priorities are. Maybe discuss that as a group to whittle it down more. We're also expecting paper documents from the developers about all of the things that were listed and discussed. Are there any other big items that we want to bring up now to the agenda?
Possibly getting that memo back from Fair Housing.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm also going to work with our city attorney to try to get some of the clarification and legal opinions.
I did look into neighborhood enterprise zone more. And because that is the section of the city that's already we have limitations for that. It's actually very detailed limitations. And yeah, I was gonna bring it up during fair housing talk, but it seemed like we were not being encouraged to talk too much. But I just want to point out that the way it's structured is that it is restrictive to new residents, which is very bizarre to me. So it's pro gentrification. I would like to see that change in the NEZ if possible, but so if we can limit a development to only newcomers, certainly we can limit a development to existing residents. And they're the people that are willing to invest more money and are new also get a deeper tax incentive too. So it's like very detailed structured about who is the target buying audience. So I don't think there's any legal thing that wouldn't be if it's not being challenged in NEZ, then it should be challenged in this way.
Can I just respond to that? So I have set up probably close to 30 neighborhood enterprise zones across the state. We looked at that immediately, of course, new construction. One of the silly requirements in that statute is that you have to have 10 platted parcels of land. I don't know why that is still in there. It hasn't been updated for site condo opportunities, but it is still in the statute. So that was our barrier from moving forward with NEZ. There is a counterpart tool called Oprah, which is used for existing structures and rehab, just so you know. Yeah. So those are sister statutes. But yeah, we explored NEZ, but just because of the nature of the parcel, it wasn't an option for us.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have split, on new construction, it is a 50% reduction in new taxes. Here it would be for 15 years because it's a historic district. If the city approved that, the city had the option to not approve that full-time period, but.
I just want to be clear, I wasn't proposing NEZ for this development. I was just using it as an example of another type of tool for restriction, but it's based on like new residents of Ypsilanti.
New construction.
New construction and new residents, it's in there. There's
I
a,
want to see what we have.
yeah, I'll show it to you.
Thanks.
I'll show it to you.
Any other remaining thoughts or comments?
I guess one more, just to go back to the concept of people buying the property to rent out. And I guess how that fits into the model. I guess I'd like to see like more information on like where that came from. I personally don't like that is like part of the model being. I think people who live here would purchase, like would love to put offers in, even if it is market rate. So I don't really want us to be seeking out people to buy these to then rent them out. That just defeats the purpose for me.
I don't get the impression that that's what is happening. I think it's just that they're not planning on it being restricted because in that, like, they want it to be as competitive as a market as possible for that market rate properties. And they're expecting that 20% of them will be people who want to rent it out. Not
We'll get more info.
planning on it.
We'll get more info on that. from the parents.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather try to get residents on a downsize to buy one of these and then rent out their property at a lower, like rental rate to people because their taxes are high. Because they've been here for 30 years. So I don't know, I guess like that's where my head's going.
Well, we have a lot of marching orders.
All right, do we need to call a vote to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion to adjourn if we can.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Bye.
Meeting adjourned. Oh, good point.
It's the 11th.
The 11th.